by the power of Grayskull.
Sometimes stuff just falls into place. I made a video recently where I asked my viewers what you wanted to see on my channel, and someone recommended me that I took a look at He-Man, or Masters of the Universe as the board game is called. And I thought about it for a while and discovered that there's a movie coming out very soon, this summer I believe. And I also have a friend who had a birthday very recently, and he's way into He-Man. So I decided to go out and buy this. Masters of the Universe Battleground starter set. And I gave this to my friend for his birthday present, and then I took it back home with me again because I wanted to paint this up for him and of course make some videos out of it. So in this video I'm going to paint up He-Man himself, and if you enjoy this, please leave a comment if you want to watch me paint more of these miniatures. There are plenty of them, so let me know if this is for you or not, and yeah, let's get painting. On the thumbnail of this video I said that it was a contrast tutorial, and that's what I'm aiming for. I want to use contrast paints as much as possible to make it simple for you guys. And that's what I'm starting with. I'm starting with a contrast paint called Gilliman Flesh. This model has been primed in Wraithbone. And the biggest feature of this model is of course the skin. And that's where I'm going to apply my Gilliman Flesh. I'm using brushes from Artist Opus, and this is a size 1. It's a good size for larger areas, such as the skin. Also, if you feel like the tone is too strong, you can thin it down with some contrast medium, but I like the way it looks just straight out of the pot, so that's what I'm going for in this video. So just apply this all over the skin and let it dry fully before we continue. The contrast paint is dry and has not only given us a good base coat, but has also shaded the model for us. Just look at this six-pack and all those muscles. Very defined. So what I'm going to do is add 2 highlights, and the first will be in the form of a dry brush. I'm using a small dry brush from the Army Painter, and the color I'm using is Flayed One Flesh. So what I'm going to do is give it a good shake, and then add some to my brush, and then wipe most of it off on a tissue. You really don't want a lot of paint on your brush for this. Like so. Then just going to flicker it all over the skin. It will catch the raised areas and give us a nice highlight. And it doesn't matter if we hit the surrounding areas, we will paint those over later. And for our final highlight, I've taken some padded witch flesh and added it to my palette. I thinned it down with roughly equal amount of water. And this is for the most raised areas, so I'm applying it with a standard brush here, not a dry brush. And that is things such as his nose, for example. Just a tiny amount. And the most raised muscles, which is probably most of the model. just to make a stark contrast between the shadows and the highlights. Just take your time and go around the model doing this. And with that, the skin is complete. It is that simple. And that's also the majority of the model painted. So now it's on to all the details, and what I'm starting with now is the hair. And before I turned on my camera, I did come in with some wraith bone to clean it up after our dry brush earlier. And I'm going to do that at every stage from now on. But for now, the hair. And I'm starting with the contrast Yanden Yellow. And of course be careful not to hit the skin we just painted. Following that, I'm adding another dry brush, this time with Phalanx Yellow all over the hair. It's a light dry brush, mind you. And once again, be careful not to hit the skin. I've added a little bit of Screaming Skull to my palette and thinned it with water. And this is to highlight his hair. Just the most extreme raised areas of the hair. Like so. And then it's back to a contrast paint, and this is for his loincloth and the fur on the top of his boots, right here and here. And the color I'm using is Sagor Brown. Just nice and easy. And then grab your trusty small dry brush and add some Doom Bull Brown, very carefully. And for the most raised areas, I'm adding a highlight of Loincloth Fur. For the wooden part of his shield, I'm going carefully in with some wildwood, using a size 00 for this. You have some showing on the front, and pretty much the whole back side of the shield is wooden. Just be careful around the skin. Next up is his steel, and that's on his sword and on his shield. I'm using Iron Hand steel as a base coat for this. It covers just nicely. Next up, I'm going to shade all the steel, and the one I'm going for is Tyrant Blue, because this is not any ordinary equipment. This is He-Man's equipment after all, and we want it to look, well, blue. So that's what I'm adding. Just let it flow into the recesses. And give it plenty of time to dry. The shade is dry, and now it's time to remind He-Man's enemies that his equipment is indeed made of steel. And I'm going to do that by adding a dry brush of Iron Breaker. Just let it catch all the raised areas. Like so. And I'm doing the same thing for the shield. And with that, I'm going to finish off the steel by adding an edge highlight with Stormhost Silver. And I thin it down with water on my palette. The most simple way to do this is actually to use the side of your brush, like so, for much better control. Make it look real sharp. So just go around the steel and add this edge highlight. Next up is his boots and all the leather on the model, and I'm using Loincloth Fur for this, which is a contrast paint. This will give us a nice base coat and shading. And for the more tricky to reach areas, such as behind the shield for example, feel free to use a smaller brush than I'm doing right now. Next up, I'm adding a layer of scrag brown where appropriate, and by appropriate I mean on his boots. There are some straps there which I would like to point out by using this color. To make a starker contrast between the shadows. I'm also going to paint it right around the symbol on his chest, avoiding the recesses. To finish off the leather, I'm going in with a highlight of Bestigor flesh. And just like when we painted the steel, it is much easier to use the side of your brush for better control. To do that wherever possible, such as right here for example. Also, I'm picking out all the knits on his bracelet here with this color. And after that, the leather is complete. With all that leather painted, it's time to paint the symbol on his chest, and I'm going in with the contrast paint, all red. Just be careful not to hit the surrounding leather. Which is why I'm using a very small size brush for this. Following that contrast paint, and then going in with some Wild Rider Red, which I thinned down with water as always, and adding a highlight. Once more, I'm using the side of my brush, whenever possible. There isn't much left to paint on this model, but there is of course his belt, which I'm going to be painting in gold. And I'm starting with a base coat of Retributor armor. And I'm using a very small brush for this because I want to avoid hitting the skin and the fur and so on. But just take your time and base coat this in Retributor armor. Next up, I'm going to shade the gold with Ryglan Flesh Shade. The name does imply that it's supposed to go over flesh, but it looks really cool on gold. Next I'm going in with some thinned down Liberator Gold. And with that, I'm painting these golden crystals, or whatever they are, on the front of his belt, to make them stand out a bit more. And after that, I'm going back to my Stormhose Silver, which I thinned down, and then I'm adding a dot to each of these crystals, or whatever they are. To make them really shine. And also I'm picking out each of these nits on the back side of his belt. And then I've added a tiny amount of Abaddon Black to my palette, and using the smallest brush that I have. And this is for dotting in his eyes. So make sure you sit comfortably and steady, and just carefully go in and dot the eyes with this color. And then, using the same brush and some thinned down Ushabti bone, I'm going to pick out his teeth. Very carefully. All that's left to paint on this model is the base, and I'm starting with a contrast paint, Basilicanum Grey, just all over these stones and tiles. And of course be careful when you get near the model itself. Following that contrast paint, our base is looking good already, but I'm going to finish it off by adding a highlight with a dry paint, Longbeard Grey. Just carefully dry brush this all over the base. Like so. The base does have this marker at the front, and this I'm going to pick out with some white scar. All that's left to paint is the rim of the base, and I'm using Abaddon Black straight from the pot. And once this is dry, the miniature is complete. I recommend that if you plan to use this in your games, you add a varnish, a matte varnish. And then you are ready for action with He-Man.
by the power of Grayskull.
And that was a simple and effective way to paint up He-Man. I really hope you found this video useful and helpful, and I hope you want to see more. If so, let me know in the comments. And with that, thank you for watching and happy painting.
We'll be right back.